All right, we are live. Ladies, you guys ready?
Yeah,
Yes,
ready.
sir.
All right, let's do this. What's up, everybody? We are live. Welcome to another session of the Cover Cloud Podcast. My name is Will. I'm the host of this show, the number one Polynesian podcast in the world. Let's get it. I can see the viewership already going up right now. I can see you guys tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in to my weekly Saturday shows. For everybody that's tuning in for the very first time, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm very excited to have you guys watching and be part of my live show. And of course, to all my subscribers out there, people always support my content. Thank you so much for all your love and support. You guys already know what to do. If you enjoyed the content, appreciate the work I've put in for you guys and the content I put for you guys, smash that like, subscribe button real quick. Don't forget, I do have a quick disclaimer since we will be talking about dating and relationships. We will have some mature adult conversation tonight. So for everybody out there under the age of 18,
this content is not suitable for the children under the age of 18 without adult supervision. Please be advised.
Please be advised. Just will let everybody know. If you're under the age of 18, I need you to go to sleep. All right, go to sleep right now. Okay, no worries. Nevertheless, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, we do have the live chat. So always appreciate you guys always in the live chat tuning in. Definitely let me know what you guys think, your different perspectives, your feedback, and your opinions on the different topics that we're going to discuss tonight. And definitely let me know where you guys tuning in from. Always appreciate you guys on the live chat. And don't forget, this is a live show. So if you're watching this right now and you want to be part of the conversation, you want to join the conversation, be part of the live podcast, I will post a public link on the YouTube live chat. So if you're watching this from Twitch, if you're watching this from Facebook, you have to come to YouTube and go in the live chat. It's going to be pinned to the top of the screen on the live chat. You can click on it and be part of the conversation. So whether you agree or disagree, I know there's a lot of people that disagree with a lot of my views, a lot of my haters and people that do sometimes get triggered by my content.
How dare you?
But nevertheless, whether you agree or disagree, I do invite you to have an open conversation. And when it comes to relationships, I know we all have different views, especially for the men and women. But in order to build a relationship, we have to have communication and talk about these things. So I invite you, whether you agree or disagree, let's have some good conversation. And I would love to hear what you guys have to say based on the topics that we're going to discuss tonight. Don't forget the super chat donations. I always appreciate you guys always donating financially to my channel through super chat donations. So don't forget, every single donation will be reinvested back to my content to give you guys better quality content. And of course, I'm launching my podcast studio at the end of this year. So I'm having real live podcast in studio by the end of this year. So thank you so much. If you have a specific question or specific topic that you guys want us as a panel to discuss, or maybe you have a specific question to one of these beautiful ladies that you guys want them to respond live to you on the live show, ask it through a super chat donation. I'll make it a priority. I'll put your question on top of the screen. I'll read it out, and then we will all have an opportunity to respond to you to reciprocate your financial support to my channel. So thank you so much for everybody always donating financially to my channel, supporting me with my pockets. With your pockets. But without further ado, that's all my YouTube stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a great show for you guys. As you can see, we have a great panel for tonight's discussion. First and foremost, give a shout out to the ladies real quick. Taking the time to be on here. I'm excited to have you ladies be on here from different parts of the world. And I know you guys have some great topics that you guys bring up tonight, and we're going to go right into it. But I know a lot of you guys watching this right now, you guys may not know who we are. So ladies, if you guys don't mind, can you give yourselves a quick introduction, your name, your age, what do you do, and what's your relationship status? I know a lot of people here want to know. I'll start with you, Rosa. Go ahead, Rosa. Introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Rosa. On social media, especially on my TikTok platform, I'm known as a girl named Rosa. I am 28 years old. I am single. However, I am a mother to one. And I am also divorced. It's been quite some years now, but yes, nonetheless, I'm kind of in that realm of dating. And yeah, pretty much it for me.
All right, no worries. Thank you so much, Rosa, for being on here. Excited to have you part of the discussion tonight. I'll pass it on to you, Alyssa. Go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, everyone. Alyssa, 34 years old, graphic designer. I'm divorced. I am in a relationship, and I have 2 kids. So that's been a big topic. And on TikTok, mostly divorce dating mama is my handle, though I'm also on Instagram as well.
All right, no worries, Alyssa. Excited to have you on tonight. I know we're gonna have some fun and fun on this discussion tonight. And last but not least, Jamie, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, I'm Jamie from New York, live in Los Angeles. I'm 32. I work in entertainment, and I'm known as Text with Shitty Men on TikTok and Instagram. And I'm single. Did I say that? Yeah.
Yes. All right, no worries, no worries. Thank you so much, Jamie. And if ladies, if you have issues with texting with shitty men, definitely reach out to Jamie. She can help you.
Yeah. You can always DM me for my advice or perspective.
No worries. Thank you so much for your lovely introductions. I'm excited to have you guys on tonight's show. But without further ado, let's get right into it, ladies. I have a hot topic. I always like to start off my show with a hot topic to discuss tonight. So be prepared. So I'm gonna play this video I saw that was kind of trending on YouTube. It kind of went viral on YouTube. It's gonna relate to the topic that we're gonna discuss tonight. It's about nice guys, So that's gonna be where that's where we're gonna focus on tonight. But let me play the video real quick. And if you guys, ladies, if you don't mind, put yourselves on mute real quick so that way the audio sounds a lot better for the viewers when I do play this video. Give me 1 second.
Many guys don't.
You guys heard that, right? Okay, cool. All right, you guys can hear. You guys heard the video?
And here's a secret.
All right, so I'll play for the beginning. Play for the beginning. Okay. All right. There it is. Let's do it.
And here's a secret that many guys don't know, especially in today's day and age, is that women love nice guys. We may not understand how much we love and appreciate them until we're a little older, and we've gotten that sort of asshole phase out of our systems. I'd say by our late 20s, early 30s is the point in our lives when we're just exhausted by the jerks and we have no time in our lives anymore for them. So we really start looking for men who we know will be great long-term partners, aka nice guys, right? And that's you. And that's you.
Okay. All right. All right. So this is a video that was trending on YouTube. So there's always this debate among men, and I want to bring this topic to you guys. The discussions from a lot of what a lot of the men are saying when they date women, when they go into the dating marketplace. There's this cliche, and I'm sure you guys heard of it, that nice guys finish last. So a lot of times, a lot of women would say, "Hey, I want a nice guy," and a lot of times, a nice guy is like, "Okay, I'm a nice guy, I'm a good guy," but a lot of times, what the nice guys are seeing is a lot of these women are not choosing nice guys to have sex with or go into an intimate relationship with. So they're wondering, like, how come I'm a nice guy, but then these women are not choosing the nice guys? And as you guys heard in that video, especially in today's modern world of casual dating, casual sex, what a lot of the men are saying in today's modern world of casual sex and casual dating, they're seeing a lot of times these women are going through a whole phase. They're going through the times where they're just sleeping around or just dating multiple men. A lot of times they're dating these men who are toxic, dating the bad guys who are not reciprocating their efforts and their commitment, not giving these women commitment to relationships. And like that video you guys saw, once the woman goes into maybe late 20s or maybe late 30s, and they realize that they can't attract the bad guy or the first option, the first type of guy that she really wanted, and they'll come back to the nice guy to settle down. But a lot of nice guys will say, "Hey, if you come back to me, I'm not taking you. I'm not taking you because I saw you go with the bad guys, but now you want to come to me because you can't get the guy you want." So a lot of nice guys are saying, I don't want to be like your second or third option or to clean up after what the bad guy did to you. So that's the question I want to ask you, ladies. Do women really want nice guys, or is it true what that woman was saying is nice guys have to finish last, and that's just a reality that a lot of nice guys have to face? What do you guys think? Because you guys heard it from her, the lady on that video, and I saw there's a lot of videos like that, but there's an open conversation because a lot of the men are confused because like the men like the women would say, "I want a nice guy," but then they look at the history of the type of men that they go into relationship with or they have sex with. They're having relationship with the toxic guys that are not nice or they're not giving them the committed, loving, and the loyal relationship. So a lot of nice guys are just confused and they feel like that they're not as a priority to a lot of women, especially today's modern dating world, where the whole phase of casual sex and the sexual liberation. So what do you guys think? So all the nice guys right now watching, I would definitely want to know what you guys think. I see you tease up. You said, "What's up, Toko? Hey, thank you so much. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in already on the live show. Always appreciate you, and I definitely want to hear what you guys think. And of course, I'll post the public link right now on the live chat. So if you guys want to jump on, be part of the conversation, definitely come on. But yeah, I'll open up the topic to you guys, ladies. Do women really look nice guys, or is it true that nice guys really finish last? I'll start with you, Jamie. Go ahead, Jamie.
Okay, so the short answer is yes, women do like nice guys, but there's a lot to unpack here. So I want to start sort of issuing a disclaimer of sorts, because there is such a thing as what I and other women like to call it nice guy syndrome, which is when men think because they're just nice to a girl that they're entitled to something from them. So there's a lot of that out there, and a lot of that on social media. You see these TikToks from men who say like, oh, you guys, like, you're not going to find a real man because you treat them poorly. When these good guys come along, it's like, okay, well, first of all, it takes a lot more to make a relationship work than just being nice to someone. But if you're just being kind to women to try and see if it can benefit you, then you're not a nice guy. So I think we need to table that, because that's another adjacent topic that I think men can work on. But I think men who are genuinely kind, good people, I think women who have worked out their issues have healed themselves, because women who go through that like toxic guy phase, like there's usually reasons for that. It's not just necessarily innate in women to want to go after the bad boy. Because honestly, I never really had that like bad boy phase when I was younger. I hated the douchebags in my high school. Like, I wouldn't fuck with the losers in college who clearly were just looking to hook up. I did have a hoe phase where I was open to that, but that's because I just wanted to hook up. Like, it's not like I was actively looking to settle down with any of those men or date them in any way, shape, or form. So I think the women who seek those men out for relationships, it's usually something within them that they need to address. But I think overall, like, most women want a genuinely kind, good, loving person to spend their lives with.
Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you for sharing that, Jamie. I'll pass it on to you, Rosa. What do you think, Rosa?
You're muted.
You're Or
She's got it.
Got it. So first and foremost, I want to clarify that just because you're a nice guy doesn't mean you're a good guy. And I feel people use that interchangeably, and that's not correct in my perspective. And then also, being a nice guy is very subjective. It's not the same definition for you as it is for me. So a guy may call himself a nice guy, but personally, I may not think that he is genuinely a nice guy. So there's that as well. And so in the end, I guess overall, just like Jimmy said, yes, we do want a good guy from the beginning. We clearly want a good guy, a respectable, a nice, so to speak, guy. But do we end up encountering them when I feel like guys put on this facade initially to kind of get us to like have interest, and they are a good guy, but then they slowly trickle away, and then we start seeing all the red flags, and then we may ignore the red flags because we need like some other stuff about you, but you may not necessarily be as nice as you think you are.
Yes, a lot of them put on a facade to seal the deal, and then once they feel they're comfortable, they start revealing who they truly are, which is something I think both sexes and genders do. But I think it's particularly men who are told to just close the deal, get laid at all costs, that they tend to be the ones who are more guilty of it.
Like just like you said, Jamie, I know women and men do that, but I feel like we tend to kind of heighten what we're really good at, like our strengths in personality. So it's already who we are, that we tend to like really focus and put out there. Whereas men, they literally pretend on some of these characteristics that they do not even have to begin with. So they pretend to have these characteristics in personality, but that's not even who they are. And so that's where the nice guy starts to we start noticing after a while that that's not who you really are.
Right. Which is why I say like this nice guy syndrome, like men who complain about that, like you're the one, if you think like, oh, you women just don't want nice guys, like maybe you need to look inward with that. If you really think that it's all women who are the problem, and you're just entitled to one of them because you think you're nice.
Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you for sharing that, Rosa. What do you think, Alyssa?
I agree kind of with what Jamie said, especially so I was like her. I never went for the bad boy, like toxic guy. But then after my divorce, I was really naive. And the toxic, nice guys who are like, I'm just a nice guy, they kind of play upon that, right? They know you're naive. They take advantage of it. And it's really the nice guys that kind of, at least in my case, turned me into kind of going through my whole phase, so to speak. Because I was just like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. Like, I'm stopping all emotion. I'm stopping this. Like, it's just going to be physical. We're just going to do this. Like, I went through a phase where it was just like guy. And then when I was done and I had healed and I'd worked through all my stuff, I was like, I don't want that anymore. I want the nice guy who's not going to tell me he's a nice guy, but his actions are going to show me he's a nice guy. To me, the biggest red flag is when you're on a first date with someone and they're just like, what can I say? I'm just a nice guy. It's like, no, you're a man whore. Okay. That's what you just told me with that. And you will shapeshift into whatever you think I want you to be to get in my pants. And it's a learning curve. It takes a while to kind of learn how to weed them out and go, the nice guy's the one who doesn't have to tell me he's a nice guy. He shows me he's a nice guy.
And honestly, one of the nicest guys I've ever encountered who seemed like he had it all there, wasn't like putting on like a facade. He turned out to be cheating on his wife, So like there's stuff like that women encounter all the time, like where we genuinely are trying to find someone who is a good person. And people can be totally hiding something,
I was the same way with someone. Like, he seemed like a nice guy. We're back and forth for a long time. Like, we dated, he ghosted, ghosted. We got back together. He would fly to California a lot, and then work here. And he was, not a nice guy at the end of the day. But you have to work that out of your system too, right? You kind of get pulled back in to finally you're like, I'm done with this. Like,
that's so interesting that like, because now that I think of it, like, I think a lot of women who go through a hoe phase, a lot of it is just born of just being sick and tired. Like, fuck it.
Or it's
like,
that one person, like this guy, kind of after him. I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done with this.
Yeah.
Tour time.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, ladies, because I know you said a lot. There's a lot of guys that have the facade of being nice, and you brought up the nice guy syndrome. And then Rosa said, nice guy subjective to the woman. So I want to interest, just for the sake of purposes of, I want to ask you guys, like, what's your definition of a nice guy or good guy? Well, like, what's your definition of it? Just for a lot of the men or the viewers that are watching this right now, what's your definition of a good guy that doesn't have a facade, that doesn't have the syndrome, and he's generally a good guy according to you? I'll start with you, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Rosa said, it's very subjective to each woman. I mean, I think overall women would agree that they'd want someone who's loving and attentive. People also have different love languages though too. And for me, I would say it's someone who, genuinely cares about other people, cares about like sees the bigger picture beyond himself and his own life, like wants to do good, like leave things better. Cause I'm very political, very active, like kind of an activist person. So like, that's very important to me. Like one of my top 3 questions that I ask in the beginning of a date is, who did you vote for in the last election? If they didn't vote a certain way, I can tell right away, like that's not going to work, because your values, I think, are the most important thing that you share in a relationship. And politics are a pretty good indicator of someone's values. So if they vote opposite of what I would, or they're just apolitical, then I know that's not going to work. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like something that's important to me that would be like indicative of like a good person. They care. Someone who's kind. I think the way they treat people who can do nothing for them is the biggest indication of the character. Like how they're treating you, someone that they're sleeping with, that they're getting this companionship from. I think, that's where they can put on that facade. But how they're treating like the waiter at the restaurant or the old lady crossing the street, like those are the things you need to look out for, because that shows you who a person really is.
Okay. All right, no worries. Thank you for sharing that. What about you, Rosa? What's your definition of like a guy that's a good and a nice guy, a good guy?
So pretty much, I think everybody pretty much covers, the basic foundations, which is very sad to say. I feel like nowadays is like we expect the bare minimum, but we call that a standard. But I mean, we call that part of our, what we're looking for, but that should already be coming in with the package, if so to speak. So in all, I would say for sure being humble. You have to be humble. And I feel like there's been a couple of guys I've encountered where they say they're a nice guy, but they're not humble. And I'm like, I personally would not label you a nice guy overall if you cannot be humble, especially in regards to social economic status, background, in terms of a person, where the walk of life they came from. So that is one of the biggest, I guess, thing for me in terms of being a nice guy, being humble. I would just, for the sake of this, I'm going to include being respectable, although I feel like that should be the bare minimum you should bring in. So yeah, being respectable and treating everyone with the same type of respect and not changing it because of who they are, what they are, or any type of factors contributing to changing that type of respect.
Okay. All right, no worries. Thank you for sharing that, Rosa. And then to you, Alyssa, like what's your like the definition of
Kind of
nice guy?
building off what everyone else said. I will say, so me personally, I don't talk politics at all, because I will say why. I tend to date a lot older than me, right? So at a certain age range, they tend to be probably more conservative than I am. I'm more of a moderate, and I'm like, I don't really care about that. Let's just agree that we're going to disagree on some topics. Don't judge me. I won't judge you. For me, the big thing is, I don't want to say, like Rosa said, the bare minimum. Obviously that, the way you treat people, but it's also how you show me who you are, right? If I tell you stories, are you engaging with me? If I try and talk to you about my children, do you ask about them? Like, they're a very obviously huge part of my life. Do I feel like you want to get to know them at all? Through stories, obviously. What do you tell me about your life? You can tell me the superficial stuff. I dated someone one time who just talked about himself the whole time. It was like, ask me how many jobs I applied for before I became general counsel at this company. It's like, ask me if I give a fuck. Like, I didn't say that, but I wanted to. But like, his biggest thing was taking me out in his Ferrari. I didn't care about that. Like, he was all about showing off. And at the moment I didn't see it, but later on it was a turnoff for me. So for me, it's really about seeing you at your core, who you really are, what matters to you. I think, having a good foundation, religion, stuff like that, it all shows a sense of who you are and what you want out of life and what you're looking for.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Alyssa. So I guess I want to open this up for discussion and what you guys think about this. But I know I understand a lot of women, if they decide to go through a whole phase or decide to go sleep with multiple men. I mean, and obviously, every woman has their reasons of why they do it. But I want to show you this. Do you think that, because what a lot of the men are saying is, do you think it's advantageous for a man, for say there's a good guy, there's everything that you guys explained, and I guess my definition was a good guy, just a guy that's good. He's ready for a committed relationship. He's loyal. He wants to. He's ready for be a father. He wants to have children. Like he's ready. He's ready for the long haul. All right. Obviously, we're all human. We have flaws. So, we all have little flaws. But he's not like, he doesn't have like those big major flaws or red flags. But he's a good guy in general, right? So what a lot of these guys are saying is, these guys are good guys, but then what a lot of these women are doing is they're choosing the guys who are not giving them a relationship or not treating them right, or maybe toxic, right? And I think there was a study that was done, biologically for a lot of women. Uh, you guys will always choose the man that's usually the most sexually attractive to you. They can, you guys can pass like the best genes and create the best babies. It's just a biological thing. So a lot of times with the nice guys, even though they're nice, but they may not be the most attractive men, but they're good guys, right? They're the good guys, but they not be the most attractive men. So naturally, as men and women, there is something called sexual attraction. So there's a difference between human attraction and sexual attraction. So you can be a good person, but there's a difference between being a good person and being a very attractive sexual person. So a lot of times, a lot of these women will choose a guy that's very sexually attractive, but they're not giving them the relationship, the commitment they want, and they go through like a lot of failed relationships. They go through their whole phase. They go through the ups and downs, and then all of a sudden they get to their late 20s or late 30s. Obviously, a lot of we all want to settle down when we get older. We want to have a family. We want to, we don't want to be alone the rest of our lives. So a lot of these women will go, what. A lot of the guys I'm sexually attracted to are not giving me a committed relationship I want. Now I want to kind of maybe go for the guys that may not be as they're not the most desirable men according to the sexual attraction standpoint, but they're a good guy. From the men's perspective, I think a lot of them are saying is there's a fear, because if I'm your third or fifth option, and you have a history of dating a very a specific type of guy, and now you come to me, and I know for a fact that I don't meet that type of guy that they usually had sex with or dated in the past. Is it fair for that guy to say, you know what, he may be a risk, because if she's choosing me when all the guys that she dated were like looked at like 6 foot, good body, very very handsome, but now you're dating me. I mean, I'm an average guy, but I'm a good guy though. I'm a good guy. Is it fair for a lot of men saying, you know what, that's a red flag for me. That's a risk, because I may be her fifth or sixth option, and I've if you look at her history of the type of men she dated, I don't fit that criteria. Why all of a sudden she's welcoming me into her life? Oh, she's coming to me, or she's giving me the attention now, when she never gave me attention, or never gave the type of men like me attention in the first 20s or maybe early 30s. But now all of a sudden you want to date me. Is that a fair assessment? Is that a fair concern for men? What do you guys think? I want to open that up for discussion.
I mean, I have a friend who I actually was just talking about this with, and he is a genuinely very nice guy, very smart, very sweet. And he is one of those people, like, I probably would be interested in dating him if I found him attractive. And, he's aware of that. We were talking at my friend's birthday the other day, and he was saying, I'm sort of the kind of guy who girls will come to after they've gone through their phase with these toxic men, and, they've matured, and, that all of a sudden I'm there and available. I mean, also because he's a good guy, though, he's not putting it on these women or like shaming them for their past, if they've grown and they're genuinely coming to him because, they are interested. I mean, I guess it could be one thing if, they're just deciding to settle for someone, but I think you have to judge that on a case-by-case basis. If a girl genuinely wants to date you, she's sleeping with you and, she's into it, like just because she dated toxic guys who were hotter in the past. I mean, I think both women and men can be a little insecure when we look at someone's ex, and like compare ourselves, like, oh, she's prettier than me, she's thinner than me, her boobs are bigger than me, like all those things. Like women do that too. But I think if you're secure in the relationship itself, then, comparing yourself to how hot their exes were, it doesn't necessarily mean that this person is settling for you. You have to kind of discern that for yourself. I don't necessarily think it's a red flag if someone did go through their hoe phase or date a lot of toxic men, as long as, they've done the work, figured out what that was all about, and they're, ready to commit to this person who's supposedly average. I don't think that any woman or man should really be discounted on that basis.
Okay, no worries. Thank you for sharing that. But just, I know you say it wouldn't be a red flag, but I'm not saying it has to be a red flag, but it would be something that to think about, just to like on a very logical observation. Say, I'll give you guys a perfect example. Say there's a girl that all she dated was like D1 athletes, right? That's all she dated her entire life. D1 athletes, basketball players, football players. And then all of a sudden, she's the guy that all of a sudden she approaches a guy that's working at the library. Wouldn't it be a very fair assessment to the guy that's working at the library?
I mean, if they're dating long enough, and
the guy at the library just to see, wait, all you dated is D1 athletes, but I'm just this guy at this library. I work at the library.
If you're dating to the point where things are getting serious, I think that you would address that and be like, hey, like, I've seen the other guys you're dating, I would say, like, I'm a little insecure. Like, I want to know that, if there's something that you feel like I'm lacking, that I don't measure up, like, you can talk about that if you're in a healthy relationship,
I was going to kind of say too, it's a little, I feel like, duplistic for a guy to hold a woman to that standard when men do the same thing. Like, one, we all want to be attracted to the person we're with, right? If you're not attracted, like, that's the point of it. But attraction isn't always the looks. You can be attracted to someone's mind. You can be attracted to the way someone is. It's a full package, right? So if a woman was attracted to a certain guy when she was in her, I'm not going to have emotional attachment phase, I'm not going to connect on any level other than physical, she's looking for something completely different when she's looking long term. So you take that all into account. But I do think, like, if a guy is or a woman's going to hold someone's past against them, it's more on them than the person they're with, right? I never hold someone's past against them. Everyone has a past. And actually, I will talk about my past with someone if we're in that type of relationship. But I think people need to take into account, when you're looking long term and you're looking future, you're definitely looking for a lot more than skin deep. So maybe someone you would have passed up in the past, you're like, wow, I can have an amazing conversation with this person. Plus, I find them extremely attractive. And so, yes, in the past, I would have said no to them because they were just a little more than I felt I was capable of taking on. But now I'm ready for that. So that's why I'm going for this person.
Yeah, like, time can change things. Like, I feel like,
so much,
especially for women, I feel like time plus intimacy has a more profound effect on us than it does men. Like, if you're spending time with a guy, like, in just a friend or platonic setting, and like, he's attracted to you, but you're not feeling it, maybe if you get to know each other, spend more time together, and realize you really are emotionally and intellectually attracted to him, all of a sudden you're starting to get sexually attracted to him too. It can happen.
All right, no worries. Yeah. Rosa, do you want to add on? What do you think?
Yeah, so I know you gave us a scenario of like a girl dating, like A1 athletes. Well, let's keep in mind that the average woman is not dating a whole history of, D1 athletes rather. So it's like, okay, so yeah, we may have a couple of good looking people in our past, but why are you so fixated on the past when you're supposed to be fixated on the future? I understand there's some things that you do have to take into consideration about a person's past because it does make them who they are and how they operate, especially within a relationship dynamic. However, a person's sexual attraction to specific individuals should not be what you should be fixated on. You should be fixated on her intimacy, her attraction to you. If there's something that you feel is lacking in between you guys, that's what you should be concerned with, not so much on her past. And I feel like when a guy starts noticing, she's had better looking guys, or if she's starting to date outside the ethnicity that she has been dating in the past. For example, in my experience, I had been, dating a lot of Latino men, but then I switched over to, Black men. And then I went back to, and not purposely, but it just kind of happened that way. And then I went back to Latino men and they felt insecure because I dated Black men in the past. And that's personal issues. That's not my issue. And so when you really start looking at a person's background or past, I feel like now it's insecurities about yourself. And now you're trying to put them onto the person that you're with. And that's not a burden that they should hold on to, or you should dump onto them rather. It's not their responsibility to unpack for you.
I agree with her wholeheartedly. I was going to say, to me, the only thing I would ever hold against someone if they told me about their past would be if every relationship ended because they cheated on the person. To me, that would be where I was like, we have a track record I'm not signing up for. But other than that, I'm not going to hold someone's past against them. And I agree with what Rosa said. Like, I've dated men who were insecure about certain things. And I'm just like, you know what? Your insecurities actually make me not attracted to you anymore. I want someone who's secure in themselves and appreciates the fact that at this moment, I want to do this with you. If you can't handle that, we should probably just go on our way now.
Okay. No worries. I know we have some comments on the live chat. I know Drolix, he shared that he's just giving her lip service, all cap. Her past behavior is a good indicator for future behavior. If she had her whole face, no reason to think otherwise, she would be a hoe in the future. Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the live chat. And everybody in the live chat, let me know what you guys think. We're having a good discussion tonight. I just want to present you from this perspective because I understand where you guys coming from. Obviously, I agree with a lot of you guys that there are people who are insecure. There are people out there that hold they can't move on to the future, and there's a lot that always focus on the past. I do believe that if you want to move on to the future, you can't keep looking back. But I also believe that the past does leave clues to what's going to happen in the future. That's why we study history, because a lot of things that happened in the past, if repeated to today, it could happen again in the future. So I think I just want to add. I want to present this part. I want to hear you guys' thoughts about it. I think why a lot of the men may see it as a red flag because oftentimes, what's required from a man in a relationship is financial obligation, right? Usually for a lot of women, if they want to stay at home and rely on the guy to be the father figure, to be the leader, to be the sole provider, he's the one that's going to be financially investing into the relationship. Oftentimes, a lot of times, sometimes women will have kids in their 20s and their 30s, and then, they divorce, and then if they have to date that person, then now they have to take care of her and only the kids. What a lot of the men are concerned about is investing their finances and their time, and knowing that that woman settled on him, and temporarily because she's not attracting the relationship she wanted from the type of man she wanted. So she still wants a guy to take care of her financially. She wants a guy to be there for her kids because it is hard. I do have conversations with a lot of single moms that have struggles financially. And I do know a lot of women that would, let's be honest, if we want to keep this conversation honest, there's a lot of women that would use a man just for the purpose of she can pay for my bills and he can take care of my kids. So I want to ask you, ladies, how does a man distinguish to know, okay, she really wants me for me. She really wants me because I'm a good guy. She made some mistakes in the past, but she's not using me just because she's lonely now, just because the baby daddy is not there no more, so she needs help, or just because she has no other options because she's older now, so she's just settling for me. So I guess that's the concern from what a lot of the guys are saying. So I agree. I understand where you guys are coming from, and I also understand where the men are coming from because it is a reality. So I want to ask you guys how can a man know that a woman isn't just using him right now because she couldn't get what she wanted in the past, and he's just a guy that's gonna pay for my bills, take care of my kids, and be here so that that way I'm not lonely no more. Does that make sense for you guys? Because I do see it both ways from you guys' standpoint, but I also hear from the men as well. They just don't want to be used. They don't want to be settled on and be used as to make up for the guy that hurt you and didn't take care of you. Now I have to fulfill his responsibility because he couldn't do it himself.
For me, from my personal opinion, you should only think that about me if you make more money than me. Of all the guys I dated, only one guy made more money than me. So if you don't make more money than me, I don't think you should even concern yourself with that in any way, shape, or form. Not that I would even use you for your money, but if you don't even, to start off with, if you don't make more money than me, you shouldn't even concern that I'm using you for your money. Now, if you do happen to make more money than me, I see where you're coming from. I really do. And it's a fair question. And I would not be upset if it was to be brought up to my attention. But I feel it will also be, you have to take into consideration how long has this person been on their own from any type of partnership, situationship, relationship, whatever you want to call it. How long have they really been on their own? If they seem to have a history of bouncing it between people in any way, shape, or form, that's kind of, yeah, you need to tread very lightly with that.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
so
I think
okay.
a hoe phase is totally different than having a history of,
Exactly.
you know, using people for their money. You know, like you just heard me and Alyssa say, we didn't want emotional connections when we went through our hoe phase. We were just looking for physical things. We weren't using any dudes for anything other than a physical connection. So, you know, to say like, oh, well, if she had a hoe phase, like maybe she'll have that in the future. Like, no, not if we're in a committed relationship and we're having our physical needs fulfilled on top of emotional and, you know, like everything beyond that. So I think that's a completely false comparison that commenter made. But, you know, if someone has a history of, you know, just freeloading off men in their previous relationships, or they're only looking for men who make above a certain pay grade, then yeah, that is a red flag. Just like women have to look for certain red flags, and men have to look for that. You know, they have to be the ones who are discerning for themselves and figure out if that's what that person is looking for. You know, I don't think there's necessarily any one indicator, you know, that is across the board, like an indication that a woman is doing that. You really have to be discerning in that particular situation.
And I
Okay.
was going to
I know.
say, you have to get to know them, right? So one of the first things when I was dating and I would meet men, I was like, from the get-go, I was like, I have 2 kids and their father's an active person in their life. Like we have 50-50 custody. I don't need them to have a father. I just need someone who's going to respect them if we ever get to the point of you meeting them, make them feel comfortable. But also, I think one way to solve being used for money is, why are you giving the person money, man or woman? Like, if
Right?
you're asking someone for money, that's the red flag. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
never.
like why do you have to be with them?
Yeah,
If this is your concern, you feel like they're using you, dump them.
exactly.
You don't,
And
don't settle either. You don't have to settle for them.
Exactly. I've had people on my social media, on my videos, when I've talked about something, be like, oh, so I'm supposed to take on your kids and do this? Like, you have your own issues to work through. Because the last thing I've ever asked from any man I've ever dated and would ever ask is for anything other than them. And by that, I mean, I don't want their money. I want them. Now, whatever comes along with that, whoever they are, is obviously what I'm attracted to as the person they hold themselves to be. But you get to know that by getting to know someone. If you get to know someone and all of a sudden they're like, well, my lights are about to go off, you know, and I really hate to be in the dark, red flag, leave. Don't give them money. Like
a Tinder swindler.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, to me, it's shocking actually that this situations even occur. And then I feel like more often than not, this could be wrong, men then encompass everyone in it, right? All single mothers are looking for baby daddies. All single moms want this. It's like,
we're living in a time where women don't need men to provide for them anymore, you know? So to have this idea that women are out there just preying on men and settling for nice guys just because they can provide for us, like,
it's so
no.
antiquated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
fine
guys,
on our own.
yeah, just like Jimmy said, we're in a whole different time. And I feel like guys still have the idea or preconceived notion that women are still wanting men to provide, to be protectors and this and that. And it's like, more often than not, women have already established all that stuff on their own before you even came into the picture. Of course, we want you to be financially stable because we don't want to have to worry about you when we already have to worry about our financial situation, making sure we are pretty much solid. And if I have to worry about you and your financial situation, it's just not, why am I even going to have you into my life as a, you know, as stress? So I feel like men still have that notion that, okay, well, she's looking for this in a relationship. Like, no, that's your preconceived notion of what I'm looking for. That's not what I'm actually looking for in a partner. So I feel like men come into the picture with these ideas that may not necessarily even fit the women they're actually dating.
And if they got to know them, they would know that right away. I feel like within a first date, you can't hide who you really are, right? At some point, things are going to slip. And if you're like, oh, I like this one, within, I would say, the first month, you know exactly who that person is because you can only hide it for so long. And clues will give it away, right? So get to know someone and you'll know what they're really looking for. If in the end you think they're only after you for a certain thing, then end it and move on. But don't hold it against the next person. Get to know that next person with a clean slate. Like, don't punish them for the last person who used you.
Right. Yeah. It's similar with like the nice guy syndrome, like just painting women across the board as only being interested in one thing. Like you're just turning your own issue around on women in general rather than figuring out why that's an insecurity for you.
No,
And-
Go ahead, Rosa.
Oh yeah, and then I feel like in also in addition to the whole nice guy syndrome, in my experience, I feel like guys, as a woman, we are now in this whole time where we are able to own our sexuality and not be shamed for it, and having a high sex drive and fulfilling those needs and not just accepting whatever a guy gives us. So I feel like there's now a whole movement going on where women are like, no, if you're not able to even get me here, you're not even going to make it forward. So I feel like some of these guys who label themselves nice guys also kind of unfortunately fit in the category of not being able to sexually satisfy a woman's needs. And I feel like, unfortunately, it's sad to say, but like these unhealthy, toxic guys, they're the ones who really be hitting the spot when you really need it. So I once upon a time had my whole face, for lack of better word, but it's like, no, it's more finding yourself and learning your body and learning what really does work for you. And in some situations, you need a man, a partner, or a woman, whoever you are attracted to find that out. You can only do so much with self-love. And I feel like some of these men are like, I think their ego is in the way, and they're not identifying that it's possibly also their lack of skill in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, women are also very accommodating of that stuff, though. Like, we can be very patient. We're communicative. Like, we'll help you out, you know. If you're willing to learn and come ready, like, we can make it work. And it's interesting you say, like, oh, these toxic guys, like, sometimes they hit the spot. But also there's a lot of, like, very attractive men who've slept with a lot of women, but they're just so hot that it comes easy to them and they barely know what they're doing once you actually
but it's also because I think they have the confidence. And I feel like a man who may not be as attractive, and they don't know that they are attractive, they're not confident from the get-go, so they don't perform that way. But guys who know that they are hot, they come in with this whole inflated ego, and they're going to perform. And then, in my experience, fortunately, it's happened where they do know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it could go either way, because there are men that actually, like, again, because they like know they have that confidence, they want to like take the time to like learn and communicate and make sure they like really get it going. But there are men who are just so self-absorbed that they don't care.
Yes, correct. I agree on that too.
Yeah, I was going to say, and a lot of times the ones who've, I could say, gotten around, they know what they're doing. Like, I don't want to teach you what to do in the bedroom.
Oh, I also find that men who have been in long-term relationships, you know, for a few years, you know, where whatever woman had them before got them really trained, like, you might have to adjust them, but a lot of times they know what they're doing too, because they had those years of communication. So
that's one thing I remember telling a friend of mine. I said that I actually prefer to date guys who've been in long-term relationships, because I've noticed that they know it takes more than just doing the basic movements and going through that. They know intimacy is required. And I think guys don't realize that intimacy is something that could get us from 0 to 10 right away if you actually put that in there.
Right.
And so I feel like men who have history with long-term relationships, at least been in, 2 at least, they kind of got that idea down.
They also have learned that intimacy isn't always physical, right? I know for a lot of people, it's conversations and stuff. Like, if I have a really intense conversation with someone and like I feel like we're connecting and I've become vulnerable, it's like it makes everything so much better, right? So a lot of guys think, oh, I'm just gonna like turn the oven on and let's go. It's like, no, it's a lot more than that.
I mean, I totally agree with a lot of the things you guys said. Is I know we do live in a modern time where women make their own money, but usually for most women, they still require. I know a lot of you guys. I mean, obviously, there's women out there that can financially take care of themselves, and obviously, there's single moms out there that can take care of themselves also. But if you look at the statistics and data, majority of the women who are single moms, they struggle financially. And it's more economic and more quality life for the kids when there's a two-income households, depending, especially if you live in a big city.
I think that
Depending if you
has
live
to
in a
do
big
with
city.
our society a lot, though, too, and our lack of social safety net, and just we don't have a lot of help for kids and single moms. Like, yeah, so two incomes is definitely
Yeah.
more helpful.
Yeah. So all what the guys are saying is, you guys mentioned before, a lot of men have a facade, right? A lot of men would play this facade of the nice guy so they can get what they want out of you, right? Obviously, we do know that, and it does exist. All the men are saying is a lot of women, especially what is majority, a lot of women who are who are single moms, they struggle financially. A lot of them do play the facade because there are a lot of stories and cases. A lot of guys, like, the women play that facade. Hey, I like you. Of course, they give him sex and make sure he gives her what he wants, just for the sake of making sure that he can just be that guy to take care of her temporarily. And then when she find a better guy, because like I said, that was the person she settled on, that wasn't really attracted to him, then she would leave for somebody else. And I guess that's just their concern, is like, how to overcome the facade. And I know a lot of you guys said the whole phase. The thing is, like, for the whole phase, I'm not only with my personal experience is talking to women who've gone through a whole phase, and a lot of you guys said if a woman chooses to go through a whole phase, it's usually because they're dealing with something, and their response to cope with that situation was through the whole phase. So a lot of times when my conversation with men and my personal experience with women who have gone through a whole phase, sometimes sometimes you're dealing with a woman that comes with a lot of baggage, emotional baggage. So what a lot of the guys are saying is, like, is this worth it for me to, like, fix all the problems that all the previous men did in the past, and now I have to be that guy to fix all those problems, to be the one to cry on the shoulders, to be the one that when she calls me, I'm always be there. But then there's a risk that I may not be the guy that she truly wanted. She's just settling for me because I'm the next best thing at her lowest point of her life. I'm just the guy that was there. But then when she gets her life together and when she finally gets over it and get back to her senses, then she may just go back to dealing with the men that she previously did before. So that's just the concern of a lot of guys. Is it worth it for me to go with a woman that has a history like that gone through a whole phase, that probably has kids, or she dated a lot of toxic guys, or is it better off for me just to go with the woman that has none of that? So
How about we
that's
Absolutely.
that's
Let's
just
say, how
that's
about
just
we
the
just get to
conversation.
know someone and see what happens versus generalizing and worrying about it and blaming them for because like I said before, if the guy has that fear, he's going to make it happen. It's going to be a self-fulfilled prophecy because he's going to become so insecure. He's going to push her away. And then at the end of the day, he's going to say it's because she did this, this, and this. No, it's because a woman doesn't want an insecure guy, right? So how about instead of worrying about her past, instead of doing that, you meet someone, you have a connection, you give it, everything you have, and you see where it goes, and either it goes amazing or it doesn't, and then you heal or do whatever. But all you said shows me a guy coming in with tons of baggage on his own that maybe hasn't gone to therapy, hasn't dealt with it, hasn't I'm very honest when I meet people. I'm like, look, I'm in therapy. I started therapy. If you can't deal it, like,
That's the hottest thing a guy can say to me is, I've been to or I am in therapy.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm also in therapy. I've been in therapy, and like, I even to my therapist, who's a male, I told him, I'm like, you know what, moving forward, if I know a man hasn't been in therapy, I mean, telling me you've been in therapy or are in therapy, I'm just like, oh damn, you know what, I'll give you my number. I don't give up my number lightly, but I'll give you my number. It's just like, I feel like nowadays it's starting to become very evident that a lot of men lack emotional intelligence. And that is why they're scared when women are emotional, because they don't even know how to even be in touch or in tune or familiar with their own emotions. So when another person who does actually show that, whatever it may be, frustration, sadness, depression, anxiety, whatever it may be, they're overwhelmed and they're just scared because they don't even know how to deal with their own. Therefore, they cannot even take on someone else's. So I see that, but that just lets you know that you need to work on yourself. You should even be in the dating scene. So why are you even trying to date and then judge me because I am emotional, because I am actually in a healthy manner expressing whatever may be going on in that moment.
Yeah, and just like, the problems that single mothers encounter, a lot of that is societal. I don't necessarily blame men for not knowing how to express themselves emotionally because they're not brought up to do that. They're taught to translate every emotion into anger or aggression. Don't be weak, be a man, don't be a pussy, So yeah, it's no wonder that they don't know how to
Do
be
you,
emotionally intelligent.
do you guys believe in like behavioral patterns?
Yes, to a certain extent.
I was to say, in what way?
Well, like recognizing certain patterns that they may lead to a result. So, uh, say there's a guy that's unambitious. You can see certain patterns of behavior that you may not know. I mean, you don't have to know that person to know he's unambitious or lazy. But if you see him based on his habits that he practices on a daily basis, you can give a very you can deduce to know, okay, based on these behavioral patterns that he shows, I can see he's probably not working on his life on a goal or something specific. Like if a guy says, "Oh, if a guy says I'm ambitious," but then 8 hours a day all he's doing is playing video games daily as a pattern of his life. I could, even though I may not know him perfectly, but if you're spending most of your time every day just at home and playing video games and doing nothing productive, I can pretty much deduce that you're probably not as ambitious as you claim to be. So I think what a lot of the guys are saying is like they've gone through it. Like they've gone a lot, especially the guys that have been used by a lot of the women that they claim to they want nice guys. They've gone through it, and after they've gone through therapy, like you guys mentioned, because great therapy is good. Sometimes you need to heal, but they've gone through the therapy. They've gone through the stage of working themselves, and they look past in hindsight. Okay, these were the certain patterns of these women who supposedly said that they like me for me who I am, not from my money or not because I was just the best option for her. But then they saw the patterns of what she did in her past, and then she was like, you know what? These are the patterns of the type of women I did in the past. It didn't work out. I can't say it's all women because, of course, it can't be all women because there are good women out there. There are good quality women out there. There are good wives and good long-term partners. But they did recognize from these specific type of relationships they deal with the path there were certain patterns, the same way you guys would deal with certain men. I'm sure you guys would deal with certain men in your life, and you guys recognize patterns of all these men that didn't work out, all the failures that we go through life. There's always a pattern that we see, whether it's our own behavior that we have to self-reflect with ourselves to make sure we improve because it starts with us. But there's also patterns that we see with people that didn't work out in the past that we can kind of like use that as something to be aware of. So does that make sense for you guys?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I guess I have two things. Then they should change the type of person they're going for. And two,
Yeah, of course.
something that came to mind when we're talking about the hoe phase is like, how do they know that the person had a hoe phase? It's not like you meet on the first date and you're like, hi, how are you? By the way, here's the list of the people I've slept with. Like you can assume, and everyone has a different definition of what a hoe phase is, right? Some person might think sleeping with 2 people was a hoe phase. Some people might think sleeping with 20 people was a hoe phase. So I guess it's stop generalizing and get to know someone. I know me personally, I've never told anyone. I'm not like, oh, well, on this date I did this. On that date, like you don't need to know that. I don't want to know about yours. You don't need to know about mine. Like,
yeah, and like
a question, I'll give you a truthful answer, but I'm not going to just be like, that was fun. I'm glad we met for coffee. Here's the list of every man I've slept with.
Right. Like I personally am a very sexual person. Like I don't consider myself to be like in a hoe phase at this point because I am still very discerning, but I have relationships with men that, are based around just physical connections. I don't shut myself off. I'm not like I did that for a very long time in most of my 20s. I was only going to go for guys where I saw real potential and there was a future. I didn't like hookup culture and that got me nowhere. So I was just like, okay, fuck it. I'm just going to have some fun. But, even now I'm more discerning, but, I still have those types of relationships. So if a guy is not cool with that bothers him, fine. He's not the guy for me, and like part of the reason I also started my Text with Shitty Men account was basically to get men and get women to understand this, that no matter how casual or how shallow your connection is with a guy, you're still a human being and you deserve to be treated with basic human respect and decency. It does not matter if it's just a hookup with a dude you just met at the bar a couple hours ago. Like you still deserve the bare minimum. Like no matter what? You don't deserve to be treated like crap. Like I totally reject that idea that a woman who is sexual or has a lot of partners deserves to be treated as less than. So if some guy still holds those ideas, fine. Like then I don't want to have much to do with you anyways. Like you're not the one for me. So again, like if a guy were to have a problem with that, but like honestly, most of the guys that I do connect with on that level, you know, they feel the same way. Like they're kind, they're respectful, they're communicative. We don't have a long-term future together, but we enjoy each other's company. And so I can still date and pursue something real and more long-term in the meantime. But yeah, does my quote unquote body count, is it higher than probably a lot of women? Yes. But if that's an issue, he's not for me.
And I was gonna say, I know based just on me, what I consider probably I think is a high body count for me would probably people would laugh at, be like, that's nothing.
Mhm.
But for me, just based on how I was like raised and stuff like that, it seems like a lot for me. But also, I'll never forget. I think it was my sister made this comment to me one time because I was like, oh my God, if you sleep with a guy after the third date, they're going to judge you. And my sister was like, but they're sleeping with you too. Like, so
Exactly.
who are they judging?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah,
you know.
like men get a free pass for that, you know, because like, oh, that's just what guys do, and women are shamed for it. So, and I just,
Yeah,
I will die on that hill.
Yeah, to add on to what Jamie said, to kind of extend on that, I feel like it's very aggravating as a woman who is very comfortable and confident in her sexuality and has a high sex drive. There's the running joke that, you know, a woman who has a high sex drive, she must have daddy issues, and that's why she's having so much sex and why she's a nympho. It's like, no, can I not just enjoy sex and I like sex? If I'm actually getting good quality sex, I'm going to want it as much as I could possibly get, and I'm going to be having it as often as I could possibly get.
Right.
But for society to come up with some stupid reason why a woman has a high sex drive is because she has this and that and the third in regards to emotional baggage or whatever is beyond me. Because a man who has a sex drive, there's no reason. We don't label it a reason why he has a high sex drive. But for a woman, if there is some type of reason why something must be wrong with her in order to have her be that high of a sex drive.
And I think there's historical precedent for that too, because for centuries, the only power women had in this world was who they gave sex to. Everything else, men were in charge of us. And, you know, so they had the option of marrying a pure woman who was only touched by them. It didn't matter how many other people they slept with. And, you know, that's why there's a lot of like slut shaming inherently like among women, because for a while it's like, okay, we're trying to like get the best guy and, you know, preserve ourselves. But then there's these other women who are giving it away for free. Like that's not helpful to us. So you have all these like very ingrained emotions about it, when really it's just goes back to a lot of just internal misogyny.
No,
Exactly.
I would say when it comes to that difference between sex drive between men and women, I just want to first to say that I don't believe in casual sex. I believe in strong families. I believe in making sure that we stay in committed relationships because it provides a better quality of life for the kids. So I don't believe men and women should go out there and just have multiple sexual partners. I'm more traditional. But if you do look at the biology, the reason why what society tends to look at why negatively a lot of women who have a higher sex drive decide to go through a whole phase, because biologically women are not built to be promiscuous. Of course, there's women out there that do have a high sex drive, because that's why it's seen as abnormal, because there's more risk for you if you choose to go to have sex because you can get pregnant. So that's why for majority of women, they wouldn't want to just go out there.
Condom and you're on birth.
Well, yeah, well, of course, but the condom, it's not 100%. It's going to protect you. And let's keep it honest. Most people, if they really like the person, they could just go raw. Like we wouldn't even care about the condom if you really like the person. The thing is, for majority of women, they're very selective. They don't want to just go out there and sleep because there's a risk. You might have kids, and in the worst case scenario, you might have kids with a guy that doesn't want to be with you, and you end up a single mom. So majority of women are very selective. So there's always the extreme or the exception.
Well, see, there's the thing, because you're talking about like you're selective about like, yes, like I'm having casual sex with other people that it's not dudes that I would like want to settle down with. You know, I think
but there's always a risk, right? there's always a risk. So you can say even if it's guys that you may not settle down with, but there's always a risk. And also there's a lot of women out there that end up having kids with guys that do not love them, have no concern for them, and do not want to step up to be the father
and
for
I
their
get
kids.
what you're
That's
saying.
another topic entirely.
Yeah. So
the
it's
only
not.
thing I was going to jump on when you said
All I'm saying is for men, we don't have the risk of pregnancy, so that's why it's we're just built to have sex, and we can just move on to the next woman and have kids, have sex. I'm not saying that's what I agree with. I'm just saying
that's also men absolving themselves of responsibility.
How we're created biologically. Men were created to spread the seed and have a high sex drive, and women were created to have babies. So that's why a lot of times, if a woman has a high sex drive, she's often perceived by society at a negative perception, because like, why are you doing that and putting yourself at risk to have a baby, and also with the guy that's not going to be the father for your kids. That's why a lot of women and men were like, what are you doing going out to put yourself at risk? But there's no concern for guys that end up having sex because they don't have the same risk as men. So that's why I just want to break down the difference between the biological thing, because it's not really a societal thing. It's just how we're built differently.
No, I think what you're talking about is more rooted in evolutionary psychology, but biologically there is vast differences among women and among men, like about where sex drive lies. It's really like, in general, yes, men tend to have higher sex drives, but there's still such an enormous length of like say like men and women like are over here, and then women and men are over here. Like there's more difference between like among each sex than there is. Like we overlap a lot more than most people realize. I think a lot of it is societal. We've been trained, or, you know, a lot of us just assume it's biological, but really if you look at the science and the research, a lot of it is just what we've learned in our society.
And I was gonna say, just to go back, Will, to what you said really quick before about like family unit, long-term relationship, like that, I think that's good thinking. I think where that thinking can lead you wrong is it's put more on women to stay in toxic, abusive relationships for the sake of the kids. And what you're really doing is disservice to your kid. Your kid should see two happy, healthy, or one happy, healthy parent versus two miserable people in a relationship that hate each other and bring out the worst in each other, right? And you can also have a high sex drive and be in a relationship. You can have a low sex drive and not be in a relationship, right? It doesn't affect it. Like, find the person you're compatible with and it'll work regardless.
Yeah,
well, for me, the solution. The solution, like, make it for women, I would agree. I would say the solution for that is make sure that you have to test your man to prove to himself that he's a worthy man before sex. Like, don't just have casual sex like today. Like, we have casual sex in the beginning of the relationship, whether the first week, whether the first month. I would for me, I would tell my sisters all the time, because I love my sisters, I love my nieces, you know, because we have a casual sexual dating culture. I tell them, test the man, bring him to your family, bring him to meet your father, test him to make sure that he's really invested into you. And the guy that's willing to go through hurdles and making sure that he's going to prove in his best interest to make sure that he's committed to you, even without having sex, is a guy that's going to be with you long term. But I think in today's dating culture, we do the opposite. I think most women today are not really testing the men and making sure that they prove to be good quality men before they give up sex. Because once you give up sex,
I don't think that's
putting undue burden on women still.
I'd say I was with my ex-husband for 5 years before we got married. We were together for 13 years. He met clearly everyone in my family, and he's a piece of shit.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm not saying it's not 100% proof.
No, just because they meet your family member doesn't mean that they're going to be a great guy. They could meet your mom, your dad, your dying grandma, and they're a piece of shit guy nonetheless. So just because they meet your family, just because they meet your daughter met you and you're the father, he's a great guy. No, he's going to do whatever. Like men say, guys do whatever they do just to hit. He's going to put on the best show possible in front of her family if he wants to hit, especially if she's really beautiful and probably better than he's probably ever had. He will go 3 months without hitting just so he could hit that one time.
Yeah, the lengths men will go to once they set their mind to something. Like, again, they put on that facade as long as they have to seal the deal. Some might give up sooner, but a lot of them.
Have you guys ever brought your your boyfriends or people you dated to meet your father or an uncle that you trust, a man that you trust?
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
I
yeah, I've
haven't
never been in a
because
relationship where I felt it was serious
exactly.
to do that.
And also, I don't need my dad to tell me if the guy's a good guy. I can figure that out on my own. But for me,
Yeah,
meeting the family, meeting anyone like that, that's a big step. The only person my family's ever met is my ex-husband. If you're meeting my family, that means you've proven to me we're long term. Like, I don't
No,
take lightly meeting the family. But
no,
also, like I said,
go
I
ahead, go
don't
ahead.
I agree with what they said. Like my first relationship after my divorce, I dated the guy for 2 months before we slept together. We slept together once, and he ghosted me.
Yeah.
Like literally never
I
heard
would,
from
I
him.
would, I would recommend longer than that. I would recommend at least 6 months to a
But
year.
see, that's the
That's
thing.
not
That's
logic. That doesn't work in today's dating
putting
culture.
undue burden on women to use their
Yeah.
sexuality as a bargaining tool rather than something that is
Exactly.
for them, that they can own and they have to enjoy in their lives. If you're dating a woman just to sleep with her, you're a shitty person, no matter how long that she makes you
No,
wait.
But she might as well figure that out sooner rather than later. Why should I have
no,
invested 2
no,
months?
look, you have to understand, like for men, we all like the men who commit to you, we still want sex. Every man wants sex, but there's a difference between men that we all want sex, but I'm willing to invest into you and commit a relationship with you. So the thing is, like, we're biologically
That's
as men, we
part of
want
the
sex.
committed relationship, though. That's a fundamental. You can't be in a committed relationship if you don't know if you're sexually compatible.
But the thing is, no,
Yeah,
I
because
got
imagine waiting 6 months to find out that guy is 3 inches long. No, thank you. I'm not. You told me I invested this whole much time, and you're 3-4 inches, and they're skinny as a pencil. What the fuck did I waste my time for?
Again, that's the
That
thing.
was also the first one.
If a woman
No.
really likes that guy, though, she will be accommodating. Like we are willing to accept so much.
I'm with Rosa on that. No.
I mean, I've never had that problem personally, but I do know other women, like if you just happen to end up with someone who's not that well endowed, but you really like the guy, like you have to weigh your options. And, so like I've looked up articles on this because I was having a conversation with my friend. I was curious, like, there are like interviews that women have given, and a lot of them, like you just learn to adapt. So
Yeah.
again, like I think, sexual compatibility is an important aspect of modern relationships. Like it doesn't sound romantic, it doesn't sound traditional, but it's really just a fact. And, if you want to wait, like, again, a person's sexuality, what they do with their body is their choice. If someone wants to wait for marriage or hold out for several months, you do you. But at the same time, I don't think it's fair to encourage women to hold out for something that they should be enjoying for themselves, just so they can determine whether or not a man is a good person and is really invested in them. Because I've literally jumped into bed with dudes, like literally like on like just meeting them, like I'm not dating them, but like genuinely like the kindest, sweetest guys who like really do care and do put an effort in, and then you see guys who hold out and they're trash.
And a good guy won't judge you for it too, because
exactly, because a good guy will understand that no matter how many people you sleep with, how quick they jump into bed with you, you are a human being and you deserve to be respected and not valued less.
And I feel like people confuse having a high sex drive, like a promiscuous woman, that she would automatically sleep with a lot of guys. Like, no, like for me, I have a high sex drive. I stayed with one guy and had the most sex in the last 8 months. And me and him just happened to be very compatible in that area, which was amazing in every way, shape, or form. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, it was stimulating. Some guys just come in and think that they can just stimulate physically. No, we're women. We do need mental stimulation as well. And I feel like being a high sex drive or having a high libido doesn't mean you're having 20 guys. If you want to have 20 guys, go for it. That might be it.
Yeah,
but it
just be safe.
but it can
I'm
also
like Rosa.
only having sex with one guy.
Yeah, I had a guy ask me who's sort of like, one of these regular nice guys who I'll see on occasion. And he asked, because I was saying, like, I do want to get married, have kids. Those things are important to me. And he's saying, well, will you miss casual sex? And immediately I was like, absolutely not. It's not about like just having random guys, like having to like go through my phone, like, trying to get it at, well, like, no, I want someone regular and reliable, who cares about me. Like, I don't even care if it gets boring, like bore me to death for the rest of my life, as long as it's consistent, you know? And I think, like Rosa said, you know, you can have a high sex drive and still want to be with one person, only sleep with that one person.
And I'm like
No,
Rosa the
I-
same way. I have a high
No.
one, but when I'm with a person, that's it. Like, I don't look at anyone else. I'm talking
Same.
to anyone else.
Same.
Like, just because I like sex doesn't mean I'm doing it with the world. You know what I mean?
Right.
The thing is, I mean, I totally understand. If you like sex, if you want to pursue and you want to have a high sex drive for me, that's fine. I guess the reason why I may disagree with a lot of things you guys said is because my ultimate concern is always the children and making sure that they have a stable father and mother at the home to raise them to have a better quality of life and a stable relationship. And the way I look at it is like, if this is the modern way we're dating, right? If this is the way we're gonna go in today's 2022, we can just have sex as many people as we want. That's fine. But my question is it working? Is the way we date today, by having sex, by having go through a whole phase, by not waiting out and making sure we prove to make sure that we vet out the partner we have to make sure the quality before we intimately, not only emotionally but physically go into them. And the only way I look at it is like, if you go back in our parents and grandparents' time when it was more traditional, we didn't really have the problems that we deal with today. When as far as like the single motherhood rate, kids living in a single parent household.
But women were literally property back then, you know?
Look, I mean, look, I want to make sure, like, of course, everything is not perfect. So if I say like things were traditional, of course there was a lot of relationships that wasn't perfect, but of course there was a lot of good relationships. So we can't say that all relationships was bad, but there were also good relationships as well.
Well, there are good relationships now.
And
there
I
are
was
people who meet in one night stands and are very happy.
But the thing is, we didn't have a high single parenthood rate that we had back in the day. People stayed in relationships, but now the relationships
Women
are
were
declining.
forced to be in relationships.
The divorce rate is higher. The divorce rate is higher today, and also there's a higher single rate. There's a higher rate of
women were property. They didn't have a choice.
I was gonna say, it's how you date as well. For me, as a single parent, I have two lives. I have the life when I'm with my kids and the life when my kids aren't around. I have 50-50 custody with my ex-husband. My kids have never met anyone. It's two different lives. They don't even know. So when I'm with my kids, I'm 100% with my kids. I do not go on dates. I do not leave them. They have my full attention. I have finally just gotten to my point in the relationship I'm in where he's actually meeting my kids tomorrow. And I told him before it even happened, I was like, I am with, like, we are, that's it. We are together. Like, you are my person. I don't see this ending unless like something drastic happens, because I'm now allowing you, I'm merging my lives. And that is a huge deal. And I think if people go in with that notion and they keep their lives separate and it's not a revolving door for their children, then it doesn't affect their children. What their choices are doesn't affect the fact that they're a single parent.
I know, but I understand, but that's you. But we talk about the majority. The thing is, majority statistically, if a child grows up in a single parent household, they're more likely to commit crime. They're more likely to be alcohol, drug abuse. They're more likely not to graduate compared to the kids that grow up in a two-parent household.
Well,
so
correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation.
My question is if we're gonna have sex, open up the sex, if we're gonna have promiscuous and not have sex before marriage, like, what is like the solution to make sure the parents stay together and we have a quality relationship? Because right now it's not happening. The relationships are failing.
I think it also depends on when you meet the person, right? For example, I met my ex-husband on a blind date in college. I didn't know what to look for. I thought we were compatible. Down the road, it turned out we were toxic. And my kids have actually, everyone tells me, improved since we've gotten divorced. My son's on the spectrum. He stopped flapping. He stopped, like, not being around two parents that are fighting and screaming all the time was the best thing for him. So I think it's also when you meet where you're starting, right? What I look for now in a partner is not what I looked for when I was 19, going on a date, never expecting I was going to marry that person that I met on a blind date in college. So I think it's all about knowing what you want in a person, what you want long-term, and sticking with that. And then you will hopefully have a long-term relationship where the kids have the family unit.
Yeah, and again, I can't even talk. It's late here. Correlation doesn't equal causation. So if you look at like single mothers, like, yes, they have a higher rate of statistics of crime and whatnot, but look at the poverty that those single mothers have grown up in. Look at the environments. They haven't had access to comprehensive sex education, to healthcare. There's a lot of other things going on there that contribute to that. And that ultimately can lead them to being single mothers because they don't necessarily witness healthy relationships, regardless of whether or not, they end up married or divorced. So I don't think you can just pinpoint it and say,
Well,
like, oh, if you're being promiscuous and your kids end up, a single parent, like, that's ultimately detrimental for them, because there's a lot of other factors that go into the statistics you're citing.
no, it's really you can see a correlation. Traditional, where you had sex
Again,
until you
but that
married.
doesn't equal causation. Just because it correlates, just because those statistics line up, there's a lot of other factors that you could plug in there that will also correlate, that you need to take into consideration.
There's one thing you can look at is you can look at what back in the day when we did, in order to have sex, we got married. So you got married to have sex, and you look at that at that time when people still practice that, and you look at the statistics where the single mother rate was extremely low. You look at it now where people have children out of wedlock before getting married, so there's no commitment, and that's why people end up being single moms. So there's a clear sign right there. You can see that when we had sex and when we get married to have sex, the single mother rate was low. When we
But
have
are
sex,
these single mothers that have
we're just having casual sex, then you can see that they end up when you're not married to the man, you don't have commitment from the man before getting married, then you end up becoming a single mother. There was no commitment there.
Yeah, but if you look back historically, you have those men cheating, you have illegitimate children, there's just, it's a whole
Sure,
different.
and that's what happens today. So that's what I'm saying is that's happening in all ages.
Single moms, and they're single moms because of divorce. So that does
right.
I think what
I'm a
people need
single mom
to,
because I got divorced, not because I was married when I had my kids. So
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah,
that
like
people
All I'm saying is like when kids grow up in a two-parent household, they have a better quality of life. When kids grow up in a single parent household, statistically, like majority, they don't have a better quality of life. So the question is, which method of what we're practicing today now dating is helping to make sure people stay in committed relationships, and what's leading to people not being in a committed relationship in marriage. And one of the things is having casual sex. So now women are having casual sex. The men are also having casual sex as well. I'm not putting everything on the women. The men have issues as well. But a lot of men are saying, well, you know what? I don't need to get married. I don't need to prove myself to be husband material. I don't need to be a father. I don't need to be a good man in order to have sex, because women are right now just having sex. I can do that as well.
Okay.
So it's happening both sides. Where back in the day, traditionally, if a guy wanted to have sex, he had to prove he had to be a quality husband, and the woman had to
Not
be so the standard was
necessarily,
all the
though.
higher.
Men were
you
often
had to be
free
a
to
quality
sleep with,
husband. You just had to be a husband.
yeah, men
No,
were free to sleep with whoever they wanted. It was only women that had this purity mentality enforced on
and
them.
not only that, but back in the day, guys who were like 24, 25 were taking 14-year-olds and getting married and having the
It
parents
still
sign off
happened
on
back
it.
in the day.
Like a lot
It
of
still
our
Also,
happened
grandparents,
back in the day, people died younger.
Back in the day.
So
Yeah.
I mean, by your
Yeah.
30s, you were
I
lucky to
think
be
a lot
alive.
of our grandparents and their grandparents, we can all attest to. We at least know someone whose grandma had a kid at 14. We all know someone's grandma who had 3 kids by the time she was 17 years old, or she was married at 14 to a 27-year-old man. Sir, that's actually called, rape. But that was allowed. So back in the day, yeah, women were property. Women were being 14 years old, forced to have these babies with these grown men who could not get married to women their age. So there's that issue. And then I think you have two separate conversations going on in terms of single mothers, and then also the dating, what is and is not working right now. So single mothers, we're single mothers because men failed to take accountability of their offspring. So it's not our fault that we became single mothers. It's our fault that we're no longer in a relationship. Yeah, if you want to put that on us, fine. But if single mothers who struggle are the mothers who don't have support from their partner. For me, I have one child. Me and her dad, we are great co-parents. He's my ex-husband. He was my first and only, sweet. He was my junior high sweetheart. I got married to him at 21. We thought we were going to get married and live forever and, have our child. But we were 14 when we met. Being 14 years old and then being a 25-year-old woman, not the same idea anymore. I have whole different belief system mentality. But not only that, but I don't struggle because her dad is fully accountable and fully on board with supporting his child. The women who struggle is because men are the ones who are not helping, who are not participating. So let's put the accountability on the men as to why those single women are struggling and not put it on the women.
I was to say I agree too. Like my kid's father also very active in their life, child support, like all that. Not that I'm saying that, you know, I can't support them on my own, but it's not like I don't struggle. I'm fine. Like I don't have that worry. But I was also the first person in my family to get divorced. So I had a lot to work through in that regard. Also, that's part of the reason I stayed in the relationship as long as I did, was because of this, you know, I didn't want stigma attached to it. But I was to say, like Rosa, I was 19 when I met. What I look for at 33 when I got divorced is a lot different than what I was thinking I wanted at 19 when I met a really tall, good-looking guy who was in college and was going to make a nice living.
Okay, no worries. Thank you for sharing, ladies. And I know a lot of people in the comments, real quick. They shared a lot of comments, and CTL she says she's confident in her ability to pick a good guy. Being with the guy for over 10 years, that was extremely toxic. Somebody make good sense. Thank you for sharing that. And Drolix, you shared this is why a lot of women fail. They're given sound advice, but they still think their father, brother, uncle can't judge their man with any better. Thank you guys for watching, and I appreciate your comments, whether you agree or disagree. Don't forget that it's a public show, so if you guys want to jump on and be part of the conversation, I invite you guys to come on. But yeah, ladies, we just started off that topic, and we just kind of went all the way an hour and a half right into it. And hey, we have different opinions on these things. So thank you, lady, for having the opportunity to have open discourse. Like I said, we have different views of different things, and I know I'm more traditional, but like these are the couple of conversations that we can have, and because dating, and it's for everybody that's dealing with dating today that's watching this right now, it's hard to navigate from everybody out there in the world, but it's always good to have these conversations real quick. But I do want to open up the topics that you guys wanted to bring up also, and finish up the podcast with that. Let me start with you, Rosa. What was your topic and question, and we can kind of dive into it and discuss that.
My topic, I'm so sorry, I guess I wasn't well prepared for this. I would say probably the only thing, it seems that nowadays dating, men are starting to become more comfortable with being emotional human beings and actually acknowledging that. And I feel like those who are actually taking the time to acknowledge and process and feel their emotions are actually ahead of the game and more successful in relationships than those who are not. And I feel like men are starting to, and I feel like women and society in general are starting to give these men the safe space. And I'm very happy for that, because in history, like historically, men have been told not to show emotions, to hide it, don't cry, don't do this, don't do that. Then that means you're weak and this and that and the third. But no, mental health matters for men and women, who, regardless of your gender. Mental health is very important. And for men go through a lot of traumatic experiences, just as women do, in different aspects, but they still go through a lot of trauma that needs to be unpacked, that needs to be processed. And when it's not dealt with appropriately in a healthy manner, it's just going to trickle down into your relationships, and relationships don't work out, and it just becomes an ongoing cycle.
Let me ask the ladies. Ladies, do you guys like an emotional man?
In what way?
Yeah, and
Say he's he's very feminine. So it's not masculine. Masculine men, they tend to be able to control their emotions and not really, and to be very disciplined in their emotions. But men are very feminine, that they tend to be more expressive with their emotions. Do you guys like emotional feminine men? Or do you guys like masculine men that are not as emotionally expressive, but
I feel that being emotionally intelligent should not be considered feminine. I think being emotionally intelligent should just be a human thing. And I feel that the society has a misconception that if you're dominant, that you're not expressive in any way, shape, or form in terms of your emotions. And I feel like emotional intelligence does not have feminism. It should not be tied with feministic quality or characteristics, for that matter.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I think there are like, more feminine characteristics that some men have. A lot of women have more masculine characteristics. So I don't necessarily think expressing yourself and being able to communicate your emotions should be considered feminine. There are certain ways that a guy might express himself. Like, maybe if, some guys like are more sensitive and like cry more than others. Like, I wouldn't want someone who is bawling at every rom-com, that's a bit much for me, but like, I like a guy who can like shed a tear at an appropriate moment, who's not afraid to express himself when the mood calls for it, so yeah, I mean, I think it's like to just draw like emotional, like just draw a straight line and like say like, oh, do you guys like this? Like, no, because emotions are a massive spectrum. So if you're able to display them when it's appropriate, then yeah, I would appreciate that.
I would say like I find I'm more traditional in how men's roles, women's roles, and like a relationship. And I think that's again partly because of how I was brought up. So I would like a man that like can have conversations, talk, like you get your feelings across. But also I'm like Jamie, if you're like, let's watch a romantic comedy and I'm gonna cry next to you, I'm probably gonna laugh in your face while you do it. And it's not a turn on for me. Like there's plenty of men who are like that and we wouldn't be compatible. Like,
yeah,
I want the more dominant type man, not the more like non.
I think for me, a lot of it comes, I think that the way we're built biologically, like femininity and masculinity, I think our traits we were created to complement each other. So naturally, for most women, of course, there's always exceptions, but for most women, the more feminine women are more nurturing, caring, loving, more emotional expressive. You guys tend to be more emotionally expressive with your emotions, so that's why the man balances that out with his stoicism, with his ability to be able to control and be logical in situations. So I think there's a natural balance of complementary. Our traits complement each other. We can't be both emotional. We can't be both emotional expressive. It just doesn't fit. So that's why it's good for the man to have that masculine energy, be that solid foundation, that rock, that logical sense. So when the woman, you go through your phases, you go through your hormones, or you go through your pregnancy, and you go through your menstrual cycle, and you just emotions just going out of just going out of crazy. Your man's there just to be that logical rock. I think one of the problems one of the reasons why a lot of men are not strong today, and I know you mentioned before, Rosa, the society was saying men, to be strong and all the time, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of men today have problems and have mental health issues. I think I think what happened was, obviously we're not perfect. There's always, I think what happens is a lot of women will look at the men that were toxic, and then will blame it on masculinity. That's why there's a term out here like toxic masculinity, but they were just bad men. I think part of being a man and our responsibility is being able to be logical and make logical decisions and be able to discipline with our emotions, because one of the expectations of what most women in society places on men is like, we are the provider and protector. If there is danger to our family, if there's a war, if there's somebody that's going to come and, endanger my family, there is no time for me to think about how I feel. If somebody comes to endanger my kid and my wife, there's no time for me to process my emotions. Like, how do I feel about this? Do I want to cry? No. It's part of me to make the best decision possible, is to put my life on the line and protecting the family. And then I think what happens is, for a lot of men today, is they're not taught how to be able to control their emotions as a man, because a lot of times I see in modern society, they would tell men to deal with their emotions the way a woman would. So for women, like, if you guys deal with problems, you guys will talk about it, and that's how you guys, deal with your problem, which is natural for you. That's how you guys be able to deal with your emotions. But for men, it's if we get beat down, or somebody, if we're having a hard time, the only way we can deal with our problems as men, especially the expectations that society has for us, is we have to figure out solutions. And crying and whining and complaining and talking about how we feel doesn't really give us solutions to how we deal with it. And I think for most men, is like a lot of times women would tell them to deal with emotions the way they would. And I think a lot of guys will be like, you know what, I lost my job, or I just had my child had a baby, what do I do? And a lot of times, if they're being taught at a very young age to figure out how they feel, that's why I feel like a lot of guys is when they deal with challenges, instead of doing what's logical, instead of doing what needs to be done to be a great father, to be a great man, to be a protected provider, not only for his family, for society. That's why a lot of these guys get very emotional, and I think that's a dangerous man if he's emotional, because a dangerous man doesn't think on logic. Those are the types of guys, and of course, men are physically bigger and stronger than women. You don't want your man to be emotional, because if a guy can't control emotions, he can be a very abusive man. He can really, he can, a guy that's very strong and a guy that's very tolerant, that has, he can hurt other people, he can hurt other men, he can hurt other women. So because we're built differently than women, I think we don't want our men to be emotional like women. We want them to be very practical. And I'm not saying women who are very emotional is a bad thing. I think that we're very different. But I think we can't tell women to act like a man, and we can't tell men to act like a woman, because we have different expectations of what we need to do in our society, especially in our families. And a lot of times when I talk to very young men who have mental health issues, who always very emotional, and their partner complains, because sometimes I have girlfriends, hey, my guy, he doesn't have a job, I just had another baby, he's not doing anything about it, he's just whining, complaining about it. And I'm like, he's like, well, what do I do? I was like, well, then I talked to him. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, why can't you figure out a situation for your life? But he's been taught by society to deal with his problems in an emotional way, instead of doing it with a logical way, with a solution. I think men and women.
I actually agree with you on that. I might get a lot of hate, but I agree. I do think there's certain roles that need to be stayed in relationships for them to work long term. Because one of the things I hated in my marriage was I was always like, yeah, if someone broke into this house, I'm pretty sure you would use me as the shield. Yeah. And I was like, I found his lack of kind of masculinity a turnoff.
I agree. I agree to a certain extent in terms of being, emotional. For me, being emotionally intelligent doesn't mean you're being very emotionally expressive. For me, it's more like your past trauma. Have you figured that out? Any type of trauma, your childhood, your mom, your dad leaving, if your mom was a single mother, which I've noticed men who are raised by single mothers have issues or because of their dad. Not because of their mom, because of their dad.
Their daddy issues.
Or like men who are abandoned by their mama, because I've had that too, where the mom just up and left. And these men are like messed up because of that. So if you are emotionally intelligent, if you work through that trauma, that is what I was referring to, not necessarily being emotionally expressive because you had a hard day at work. I understand men might just kick back and drink a beer.
Right. Yeah, I don't agree with the assertion that men aren't taught to find logical solutions and they're taught to be emotional. No, they're taught to suppress all emotions. That's part of the problem. Expressing yourself.
I disagree with that a little. Like my son, I teach him to yes, be expressive with your relationship, but one day you're going to be married. You're going to be the person, the primary, probably breadwinner. I still do believe in gender traditional roles at the end of the day.
I think it's a difference though between saying you're teaching them to recognize their emotions and express themselves, and saying that equates to not being taught to step up and take care of yourself and, be able to.
I think the word suppress. I think the word, that's not the right word. Suppress is not the right word. I think the word is control. A man should be able to control his emotions. So like I said, for me, I can control my emotions to make sure I make logical decisions, but I'm also be able to control my emotions that if I'm with my woman and she needs me to communicate with her, because I have to be, she needs that emotion from me, because she does need affection and attention from me. I'm able to control my emotions.
You need to be able to recognize how she's feeling, how you're feeling. In order to solve a problem, to be logical, you need to recognize, you need to have some awareness.
Yes,
that doesn't necessarily mean
control is a word.
But at the end of the day, when it's hitting the fan in my life, I do want the guy in my life to be like, you know what, I got this. This is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna help. I don't want. That's one thing again I hated in my marriage. Is I was like, why am I always having to deal with everything? I want you to take control. My life.
That's the thing that a lot of women complain about. They feel like they're having to raise their partners, and I don't think that has something to do with them being taught to be too emotional. I don't think that's related. at all. You know,
I do in a
think,
way. Like, and I'm not gonna lie, I
So-
raised my son a little different than I raised my daughter because I'm like, look, at the end of the day, you are a man. She is a woman. Like, she's gonna be able to do certain things you're not, and you're gonna be able to do certain things she's not. It's just the facts of life. Like, at the end of the day, sometimes people have to realize there's just facts of life.
yeah, but I
Before
think
pass it on to
I
you guys,
no, I understand what you're
well-
saying. I just think that, like, again, like, there's a difference between like gender roles and, you know, feminine and masculine versus, you know, just societal constructs. You know, like, I don't think that a man, like, yes, men tend to be more like logical and compartmentalized, whereas women tend to see a bigger picture and are more emotional about it. Those are feminine and masculine traits. But I don't necessarily think that, you know, the problem with men nowadays not being able to like step up and women having to raise them is correlated to them being taught to be too emotional. I disagree with that.
Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you for sharing that, Jamie. I know, Daniela, you wanted to jump on as a public guest. Thank you for jumping on real quick as a public guest. I know you've been listening to the conversation we're having, and I've seen you make some comments. I know you wanted to add on. What did you want to add on to the conversation tonight?
Well, first of all, good evening, ladies. This idea that okay, so I agree with where there is some sort of flaws in traditional values, especially when we teach young men, right? Because if we look, say, 50 years ago, a vast majority of the teachings weren't passed on man to man via communication. We're finding that out as we progress as a society, which is what we should be doing now. So those principles and values that men possessed previously, they're still actually good values. They weren't just taught the way that it should be taught now, because we're in an age of information. Children grow up with a bombardment of social media. Information is retained at a lot quicker pace. So, in saying that, teaching men to suppress their emotions is not the right way, but teaching them to regulate those emotions at a very young age is extremely healthy. And this whole thing about having a safe space for men, I disagree. Men need brave spaces where they can challenge things that they truly think and believe that is not right for their lives, and have those conversations be done in a healthy manner. A safe space is a space of no challenge at all, because you're looking at the safety of everyone involved in that space. That's not what men need. Men need to be bold and be courageous to challenge when there is wrong and when there is right, and have those views and those outpoints be corrected or be challenged back. That's how we know in the world that we live in that our values are robust as they are when you're challenged by other men who strongly believe in the opposite direction. Emotional men are never good men. Why? Because they let their emotion dictate how they react rather than respond. If you find a man that's emotionally intelligent, he balances his emotions with the vast majority of logic. And this is where I agree with Will. Well, I agree with vast majority of what Will's viewpoint is. As a man, it's my role and responsibility to be the rock where my children, my wife, all their emotions get to be deep-rooted and foundation in. And although it's hard, yes, it's extremely hard to be the rock all the time, but there are certain ways I can channel that. And that's where we need to figure out as men is how do we channel those emotions so we don't end up being an extra burden to our children and the wife that we've chosen to, you know, walk through life with us.
I guess for therapy is good because I feel like if a therapy is good for everyone, right? Because you have a place where you can talk, and if you have a good therapist, they're going to challenge you back. They're not just going to be a yes man or yes woman, depending on who it is. But
yeah,
I think I agree with what you're saying. Like, there needs to be a way because, again, like I said, at the end of the day, I'm traditional, and I do think a guy should not lead with emotion.
Well, I also think we're using the term like emotional men. Really what we're talking about, I think, is emotionally volatile men. Like, we're not necessarily talking.
No, it's the same thing.
I'm saying, like, if you
I don't agree
with your emotions, it doesn't necessarily mean they're volatile. You're just letting your emotions rule you, which I don't think is good for men or women.
But if you use the phrase emotional, that doesn't necessarily mean you're letting your emotions rule you. Like, I
That's
think
why
you need to
most
come up with better
That is the
terms to make that
definition of being
distinction.
emotional, is that your emotion rules your decision making.
Yeah,
That's
that's
not the
like
definition
How
of
do you differ
emotional,
there?
that your emotion rules you.
If you're leading with emotions, I would say that you are letting your emotions rule you. If you can't control them and learn how to have an appropriate response, you're letting your emotions rule you.
Right. No, I agree. But
That
just
would make you
saying, like,
emotional.
emotional men and putting a blanket statement on like all emotions, like there's a vast range of emotions. Like just say like men who are emotional, I think that's just too broad. I understand the point you're making, but I think you need to be more decisive when you say men who let their emotions rule them versus emotional. I can look up the definition, the dictionary, if you'd like right now, of the word emotional.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's
well,
the
I
problem,
mean,
is that the emotions are vastly range, and when you have an emotional man, you never know when those emotions will manifest and which one will manifest. That's the whole problem. Yes, you're
walking
talking
on
there's a
eggshells.
whole wide range of emotions. Yes, I completely agree. But that's the problem, is that you never know which one will manifest itself, whether that through the physical, emotional, mental manipulation. Those things manifest in emotional men. They differ, yes, I agree.
But you're talking about it
And that's
manifesting in a negative light necessarily, which is why I drew the distinction of emotionally
so
volatile.
what emotions do you think a man needs to display in terms to have a healthy relationship?
There's it's a wide range of emotions. He's not bound to one
Pick
specific.
pick one.
Like joy. If a man is experiencing joy,
But is he experiencing joy to the extreme? Is he letting the happiness overtake it to the point where he can't
exactly,
control
he
it?
can be emotional,
That would make him
experience
emotional.
joy. He can
I
be
feel like that would
emotional
make him
and experience
emotional.
joy without letting it overtake him to the point where it blurs his vision.
That's human
But then I
nature.
feel like if it does
Yeah.
overtake him to the point where it blurs his vision, he's an emotional man. He's not under control. At least that's what I think. When someone says, "Oh, I'm dealing with an emotional man," I don't necessarily equate it with, "Oh, that's anger." I just equate it with that's someone who lets any emotion rule them and they have no control over it.
Yeah, see, I that's why I don't like that we're just using the term emotional, because I think it's too broad.
I mean, if we're,
Men
I
who
guess the
lead
issue
with
lies is with the terminology. So, I mean, like, to, for the sake of the argument, fine, a man who is emotional, we can cut out the word emotional, but I think at the end of the day, most women, most heterosexual women, if you will, for lack of better words, will probably want a man who is in control of his emotions. Like, I'm so sorry, is it Taniela? Like he said, in terms of being able to regulate. I think that's the most important thing to know. If a man can regulate his emotions, if a man cannot regulate his anger, his sadness, or whatever emotion he may be experiencing, that is the issue.
I think it's bad for, I agree with you. Like, we can call it any word we want.
Yeah.
I don't want a person who can't regulate their emotions. And I think that's why I tend to always date older, is I find people my age nowadays just have no concept of how to treat a woman and how to be in control. Like, I find them but again, I'm more traditional.
I'll give you guys
Yeah,
a perfect
I mean-
example, and I'll pass it. I'll pass
Yeah,
it to
no, go ahead.
Daniela. When say if my responsibility that I'm willing to take as if I become a father one day for my family is I'm going to be the provider protector. So my job is to financially provide for my family. So that's why for me as a man, my emotions does not matter if that's my duty and that's my responsibility. So when I wake up every single day to go to work, I don't care if I'm tired. I don't care if I had a bad day yesterday. I don't care if I had gone through some things or I'm not happy that day. I have a financial responsibility to make sure I put food on my table, to make sure I have bills on my table, I have my bills are taken care of, and my emotions is not relevant because my duty is making sure that I provide and protect for my kids. So the thing is, for me, is like I'm always gonna go on logic. I'm always gonna base my decisions not what I feel like doing, is what I need to do because I'm chosen to be a good father and be the responsible one. So that, and then, like I said, it's not easy. I'm not saying it right now. It's not easy. It is very difficult, and that's what Daniela was pointing out. Is as men, when we go through our downs and when we're having our hard times, that's why we need some. We need to have a outlet, a channel, and a group, a social group with other men that we can talk about these things. But like I said, because a lot of times if men don't really know how to regulate their emotions, because it's a hard thing to discipline to get to that point. And a lot of times, a lot of men can break down, and a lot of men can have issues. and they can inflict that on their partner, they can inflict that on their wife, they can inflict that on their kids. But you don't want your man to be emotional because because you don't know that emotion. He may be unhappy today, he may be happy today, and he may not do what he needs to do as a man, but he may do what he wants to do, even though that's not always going to be the best decision for him, his family, and his wife. So that's why, for me, it's like you want that emotional, because if you open up that gate, if you open up the floodgate to based on what he does is going to based on how he feels that day, especially if it's a responsibility and a duty where other people's lives are involved, especially a baby, especially kids, a family, then if that man, his decision is going to affect. So if he makes a great decision, his family, is taken care of. If he makes a bad decision, it could affect the relationship, it could affect the marriage, it could affect the kids. And I think if you want to be on the safe side, I would rather be with you would rather have a guy that has learned to regulate his emotions and base it on how he feels on that particular day, because emotions come and go. And Daniela, you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, saying that logical men, I guess there seems to be a confusion that we never experience any sort of emotions at all. We do. We experience them, and sometimes we often manifest them, especially joy and happiness and anything positive. What we're trying to get down into is that if you're a logical man, you tend to lead with a type of mindset that is, is this emotion going to be a positive or a negative impact on my family? How do I deal with it? How do I channel it into a different avenue? If it's negative, how do I channel that to a healthy, in a healthier way? Whereas emotional men will tend to lead with a thinking of, I feel this, so therefore I'm I verify my actions through this feeling. That's a whole difference. Logic is able to cut through and regulate certain things. An emotional man don't give a shit, essentially. And sorry for my word, but
No, I
they
agree.
justify
Cheaters and stuff like that because they act on their emotions.
And I think Daniela made a really good point. I never saw it that way. So men don't need a safe space. Women need a safe space. Men need a space to be brave, to challenge, to see what they could do better, to change, or whatever the case may be for the scenario. That's actually women and men are different. So although we may need something, that doesn't mean that's how men are going to need the same type of support. So that was a really good point, a different perspective for sure.
I agree with that. And I look at it this way, the saying behind every strong man's a strong woman, right? I look at it as this. If I'm with someone and they're struggling with something, I want them to know they can come tell me about it. And we are open and communicative. But I also want you to tell me what you're going to do to deal with it. What do you need me to do to help you? But what are you going to do? I don't want to tell you how to deal with it. I want you to tell me what your problem is. I can offer advice. I can offer suggestions, but I expect you as the man to also be here's what I'm doing to fix this. This happened. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I need from you to help me make this happen. But that's just my take on it.
Yeah. And Jamie, you wanted to add on, Jamie?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting because now that this has kind of come full circle and I'm hearing your perspective on this and men being logical and providers, now I understand why you're more concerned with women who are just going after a man they're settling for money. It kind of locks in why you'd be more concerned with that.
Can you take us along with that train of thought? I'm sorry, I want to follow that train of thought.
The initial concern, because if your stance is that, men are, providers and have to be strong and, make the decisions for their families, then yeah, it might be more on your radar that you have to be wary of a woman who's just using you for that.
Oh, I can see that. Okay, I can see that correlation
there. The thing is for me is if I'm gonna put myself, if I'm gonna take the full burden or making sure my family's taken care of, I just want to make sure that I have a woman that appreciates what I'm sacrificing in my life for, and not just use me temporarily for something better. So that's because if I'm gonna commit to you, I'm gonna put my life on the line. I'm gonna sacrifice my life. I'm gonna sacrifice my happiness to make sure my kids have a quality of life, make sure my wife has a better quality of life, and I want to do that for somebody that's going to reciprocate my effort and genuinely have a desire for me. But I wouldn't want to do that for somebody that just want to use that temporarily, and then and then when she finds something else, then she's just gonna move on. And like I said, a lot of guys have gone through that, and I know that it's tough. It's tough to sacrifice my life and do things for a woman, and then she doesn't appreciate that. I think it could be really hard for a lot of men. But yeah, anybody want to add on? And anything you want to add on to that? Man, that was a great topic, by the way. Rosa, thank you for bringing that up. Daniel, any last thing to add on to that topic?
No, not at all. Just if anyone has any question in terms of wanting some answers from men, I'd be happy to answer them if there's any more questions.
No, okay, all right. No, and I think one thing that Rosa did said is the safe place. I think a lot of times when women tell boys or young men or men in general about solutions, I think oftentimes they give them solutions from the lens of a woman. And so, like, the safe space is great for women because that's something that works for you. But I do see a narrative today for a lot of times because I think I don't know who brought it up, but was it you, Rosa, that sometimes the men who grow up in single mom households tend to be very emotional. And I have a lot of friends, a lot of cousins who.
It's not more emotional. They're more in terms of like trauma. They have more trauma that out with. Yes.
Yeah, because I have a lot of friends that. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Will. Go ahead.
No, I just said that I have a lot of friends and family members that grew up in a single parent household, and their mom raised them to be like a woman. Like if the way how they deal with their emotions, the way she would raise her son, how to deal with their emotions with the lens to how a woman would do it, and that's why I think a lot of times when men don't have a strong father figure to teach them, hey, when you go through these hardships, this is what you need to do to test yourself, to challenge yourself, to be courageous as a man, to have those qualities and values. But if he doesn't have a man or a masculine figure to show him that, and oftentimes he would just respond a way that naturally, a more feminine way, or how a woman would respond in that situation as a man. So I just wanted to add on that piece because I think Rosa brought up that point.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, I think it's also important that men and women talk to each other about certain problems or things they're encountering because it does broaden your perspective, like especially like talking about dating, like you hear the other person's side of it and like you consider things that you wouldn't have otherwise if you're only talking to women or men are only talking to men.
Yes, definitely. I'm not gonna lie, getting a man's perspective within the dating scene in itself, it really shines. Men do think different. Men operate different than the way women do. That is just facts. We could argue back and forth that we could, take on some of their characteristics. Yeah, we can, but we're never going to see the world the way men do in terms of dating. And so their advice does come in handy. And so it is very beneficial, in my opinion, to get a man's opinion. But that's all it is, an opinion. And it's up to you if you want to take it and actually act on it. That's free will. But definitely agree with Jamie.
I grew up very traditional, and I remember back my parents, my grandparents, when I talked to them about, as far as I know, a lot of you guys don't believe in gender roles, but I know Alyssa brought up gender roles. I mean, there was a time back in our parents' day when men were taught to be provider and protectors. There was no conversation. It was taught to men, hey, that's your duty. You need to be strong for your family. You need to be, if you have children, there's no question. You gotta make sure to take care of your kids, marry a woman, and making sure that you be a great father.
And I agree 100% on that. Like when I had my children, I gave up my career. I had no problem doing that to stay home.
Yeah.
But that's something I want to do.
There was a time where that's where men were taught, hey, it doesn't matter how much you feel, if you make these decisions, and if you make these type of decisions, especially if you have kids or if you become a father, this is your duty and responsibility, and it's something you have to do. And there was a time like that back in the day, but now today, a lot of men, if they have kids, they have to think, do I want to take care of these kids? How do I feel about this? If they what do you call it? If they get married, I've talked to a lot of guys, like, they should I go to work? Maybe I should just let my woman go to work and I just stay home, play video games all day. So I think that's where the issue is like, back in the day, the duty and the responsibility of a man was very clear cut. It was taught to be in a certain way. This is what you need to fulfill. But now today is like more based on like how you feel, your emotions, And then a lot of guys are like, it's like some guys, you know what? I want to have sex, but I don't want to be a father.
Well, I think personal responsibility and accountability should have no gender. Like we should all step up and
yeah. But I think, a lot of the accountability. I think if you're gonna be accountable, I think being a part of being accountable, you have to make logical decisions. It's like what's best in this certain situation. Go ahead, Daniela.
No, just that statement to me is problematic. I understand it to its full content, but we shouldn't shy away from actually saying men need to be more accountable instead of trying to umbrella rule it. Yes, I understand women need to be accountable for their own action and it's a personal choice, but we also need to say it in the full length and be direct in the sense of, as men, you need to be accountable. If you're going to be a promiscuous man or whatever it is, and you get a woman pregnant, I'm sorry to say it, buddy, but you have a bigger responsibility for that child and that woman based on a choice that you've made.
Yeah.
Right, and I agree.
So instead of pulling out, it shouldn't be gendered, I agree, but we should also be able to say it directly to men in this conversation. So,
in that context, yes,
on,
absolutely. Like with what Alyssa was saying, earlier when we were talking about, and Rosa too, we were talking about men being able to shirk that responsibility, whereas women give birth to it. So it's a little more difficult.
And I think that vast majority of society is so confused. We're drawing reference. We're not saying we want to go back 50 years ago. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is we're drawing reference of principles and values that traditionally set up great foundations for family. Yes, there was problems back in the days, but women have more right now, which we agree with. Women should have the right to choose their own lives, who they be with, their career, and all of these things. So that's equal on the board, and as far as that goes. What we're trying to say is we can refine these principles and these values to create stronger families now. We know from data and statistics, and not only that, from experience, that two parents in a household always makes it more optimal for children to grow up in an environment where they have both best of both worlds. So when we argue against that, it's like, what other system can we draw reference from that will set up a better result than what we already know?
Be broadening the topic far too much late in the hour, but what if it's a same-sex marriage?
Even in a same-sex marriage, you will always find a more feminine couple and a more masculine couple. That does not change. So that dynamic still exists.
So you would agree then that a feminine energy can come from a male, masculine energy can come from a woman. You're just saying that children need to experience both. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's most optimal when both fall into that role. In a heterosexual marriage or relationship, we naturally fall to our biological sex and nature. We want to go through the same-sex marriage, that's a whole different conversation. But naturally, in a heterosexual relationship, we naturally fall into our own nature. The problem is that a vast majority of men get given sex without any incentive to build values, which is why there's so much problems with men today, is that, I can have sex and not be a good, strong man to have access to it. And that's why I'm a big proponent of brave space. More men need to step up and go, hey, dude, you want a long-term family, or do you want to muck around and have babies left, right, and center? Which is not going to help anybody. It's not going to help women. It's not going to help us men. We're getting vilified by women for being dicks, essentially, when what we're trying to achieve is a long-term relationship with families.
All right, no worries. Thank you for sharing, and we have come to the end of the podcast, the conclusion of the podcast. Man, that was a great discussion, ladies. We had a great discussion. We had a great open discourse. I know we had a lot of different ideas, but yeah, appreciate the open-mindedness to have these open discussions, whether we agree or disagree. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you so much for everybody that's watching. And just the last few comments. I think Dudasi said, you shouldn't sacrifice your happiness. You're providing for your family should be your happiness. I know me and Daniela, we don't believe in happiness. We just believe in doing what you need to do as a responsibility as a man. And then Dralik said, women can't raise men, fathers raise men, single moms turn their boys into house husbands. Hey, I know you guys have different opinions about these things, and I appreciate you guys on the live chat sharing what you guys think. And thank you, ladies, for being having this open conversation tonight. And sorry if we weren't able to go into. I know we got to Rosa and her topic, and I wasn't able to get to Alyssa and Jamie on your topics. But we just had that one topic. And
this is good.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
So we made some great conversations tonight. But ladies, just to conclude, what's your final thoughts from tonight's discussion? What did you take away from it? And of course, how can people find you? People watching this right now, they want to find you and support your platforms. Drop your social media platforms as well. So I'll start with you, Alyssa. What's your final thoughts and how can people find you?
You can find me at Divorce Dating Mama on TikTok and Instagram. And I would say my thing to take away from this is just don't loop everyone together, right? Just because someone's a single mom doesn't mean they're a certain way. Things end up like that. And I think you should just give everyone the benefit of the doubt when you meet them. Let them show you who they really are. You'll know soon enough if it's someone you're compatible with.
All right, no worries. All right, thank you so much, Alyssa. Pass it to you, Jamie. Final thoughts from tonight's podcast and how can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Text with Shitty Men. I would say my takeaway is, I think most of the people here, like to some degree, are a bit more traditional or heteronormative than me. But I think we all have like just the betterment of our society and, just trying to do best by women and men in mind. We all have good intentions, and I appreciate that we can have an open dialogue and disagree and share our thoughts respectfully this evening. So thank you.
All right, no worries. Right, thank you for sharing your thoughts. And last but not least, Rosa, final thoughts and how can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and TikTok as a girl named Rosa. And my takeaway will definitely be the perspective from Daniela in terms of, men don't need a safe space. And that's what, as a 28-year-old woman, is actually, I was like, wait, that's actually like a light went off in my head. And the men I encountered, I think they do need that brave space to be challenged. And coming from a men's perspective, that was very intriguing. That was, very enlightening.
Yeah, I would say that sometimes, men don't need a safe space. We just need another man to call them out on their shit. Sometimes this is how we communicate. Like when I
it's always great to have a good man who can call the other ones out. We need that. We need more of those,
I talk to my buddies, like there is no like, how you feeling? When I see them making mistakes or messing up their life, I just call them out on it directly. And this is how men are, but we deal with each other.
Yeah, thank you so much for
awesome.
No worries. Thank you so much, Rosa. I always appreciate your feedback. Please follow all these beautiful ladies on their platforms. I've definitely dropped their platforms on the description below. And of course, we do this every single Saturday. So if you missed the beginning of the show, watch it from the beginning. And of course, like and subscribe to the channel and get the notification for next week's show and a whole different panel. But ladies, thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation. Enjoyed the open dialogue. And I'm glad we're still good. We're still good friends at the end of this podcast. I'm very excited to have these discussions. And thank you for being honest and being yourselves. Daniela, thank you for being a public guest and sharing your thoughts as well to add on to the conversation. But ladies, you guys have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.